Hello, my name is Kelly Dunning. I am the Timberline Professor of Sustainable Outdoor Recreation at the Halb School for Environment and Natural Resources at the University of Wyoming. And I put together this presentation. I'm going to try to keep it really short on how to apply for grants. And I just want to say before I get started, I didn't know any of this when I was hired as an assistant professor in Auburn in 2019. I had to figure it all out on my own, and I made a lot of mistakes. And I figured that once I crossed a certain threshold, for me, it was a couple $1 million worth of external funds, that I would make a video and instruct other new faculty how you go for these things. And the other thing that I'll mention too is like every grant that I ever got, I went for cold. So I just applied for it. Like, you don't have to know anybody, you don't have to reach out and network. I'm sure that stuff probably helps, but just know that like I had no connections and no ties to any federal funders or state funders or any of my funders at all. And just get that application together and submit and see what happens. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the team that it takes to apply for a grant and where you start. So I'll start with where you actually begin. So, how this normally happens is you have an associate dean, maybe an associate dean for research, or maybe your dean, or someone, maybe there's someone hired specifically at your university to send you these grant opportunities, and you see them in your email, or you can sign up for some online grant platforms that your university may be a member of. However you get these, it's usually word of mouth. Like, I usually got the grants that I applied for by word of mouth. And this is what's called an RFP, a request for proposals. And you're going to see this in your email, you're going to see this on the grant platform from your university, and you're going to say, does this make sense for me? And this is an archived one. This is my most recent grant that I got, a Dynamics of Integrated Socio-Environmental Systems grant, a DISIS grant. And this is through the biggest federal funder, the National Science Foundation. And I had a friend send this to me and say, hey, this kind of looks like you. And, there's all this information in here. Like, some grants require you to put together a letter of intent, which is just, I love when grants do this, like a 2-pager basically on what you're thinking. And they review it really quick and they come back to you and they say, oh, this wasn't the direction we're looking to take this in, or yeah, go ahead, submit a full proposal. It just it saves you a lot of time. These guidelines for like the budget and all that stuff, they're really important, and we'll come back to them. But the first thing that I want to walk you through is like, how do you figure out if a grant is right for you? So you go down to the program description, and this is gonna kind of involve me reading some of this to you. So I had a look at this. The human population on Earth has had an impact virtually on all aspects of Earth's near surface environment. Distinguishing between separate human and natural systems is no longer clear or obvious, since these are often overlapping and can be considered integrated socio-environmental systems. Such systems include a continuum of environments, from those with limited human populations like polar regions to those in which human systems and processes mostly dominate. So I'm reading this already and I'm like, this sounds exactly like what I work on. I work on like human impacts to the environment, the impact of global environmental change on human communities. And I'm really interested in environmental change, like climate change. And just, giving this a quick skim, I'm like, yes, this looks like something that would interest me. Now you can get in, now once you know, like, hey, this definitely has to do with my research area, then you can look into the specific types of proposals. When you're first starting out, if they have these like smaller versions of a full proposal that are open to early career people, you want to go for these first. You want to compete small first, just because you're going up against other early career people. So it's like people with not so much experience yet. So I went up for this DISIS X Track 2 exploratory proposals, because these are intended for people that, hey, I just got tenure. I'm not really that experienced. more limited in scope, kind of like the first step in your NSF or in your DISIS journey. So I went for the DISIS X Track 2. So what you're first going to do, you're going to go through this, you're going to read about like their, the eligibility. You want to make sure that you're eligible to apply. If it's coming from NSF and you work at a university, you're probably eligible. And then once you start getting into the mindset where you're like, hey, I think I'm going to write this up, you go to something called the PAPPG. This is an acronym that the NSF and other federal funders use for it's basically like the format. And you have to do your format exactly like they tell you to, or your proposal might just get thrown on the garbage pile. So it gets into some really specific details here, but you can get into that as you start to write. What you want to start thinking of is your idea. Like you want to read this program description, you want to read what they're really looking for, and you want to get your idea in your head. So for this particular idea, I was like, hey, I'm a fisherman. I love fishing. I love fly fishing. I love the people who like to fish. I want to do something about the state where I live. I live between Wyoming and Colorado. And I want to do something involving humans, so fishermen, and environmental systems, so snowpack, mountain streams, hydrology, stuff in the mountains. So the first thing you do, you have your proposal, your information on your program, you have your idea in your head, then you want to assemble your grant writing team. I put together this little graphic for a grant writing team, and I hope that you remember these people as the animals that I chose them as. So the first team that you want to talk to are your collaborators. For me, I want to do fisheries in the mountains. So I need a hydrologist. I need somebody who knows about precipitation and snowfall. I might need an economist or a political scientist who knows about how to do these like big surveys and ask people about livelihood impacts. So I'm going to send some emails to people that I know at work. I'm going to have a little like paragraph blurb about what I'm thinking of applying. And I'm going to email these people a link to the RFP. So a link to this, and a little one paragraph blurb about what I want to do. And then you get your team together, and then the next step is to involve your internal department business manager. This is an internal person in your department. There's two groups of people that you want to involve at the university. I would give your internal department business manager about a month or more warning, because you're going to have to go back and forth quite a bit on your budget. And they're going to get your budget in shape before it goes to the higher level, the university level, your Office of Sponsored Projects, your OSP. So the first step is right here. You have your collaborators together. Maybe you set up an initial call and you're like, okay, maybe each of us asks for a PhD student or a master's student, some undergraduate research, some travel funds, some equipment costs. So then the next step is you work with your collaborators and your internal department business manager to put together a budget. Now, some universities don't have budget templates available. I have this budget template available that I got from Auburn. And if you look at the comments of this video, I will have a Google Drive link, or you can email me to get this template and to get access to this folder. So here's how you start. You are what's called the PI. You came up with this idea. You've assembled the team of your collaborators. You want to put your ask in here first. So maybe you want some summer salary. Summer salary is one of those things. Professors get paid for 9 months. Your summer salary, usually they'll give you some summer salary in startup, but once your startup runs out, you're going to want to pay your summer salary with grants. If I'm the principal investigator of a grant, of a project, say it's a 3-year project, I ask for about 1 month of salary per year that I'm running the project. And then everybody else who's sort of like a co-PI, a co-principal investigator, they can ask for about 1 month per year or less. I only ask for about 1 month per year just because reasonably throughout the course of a 12-month school year, I'm going to be spending about 30 days working on this project over the course of the full year. So I'll put my salary in here. I'll ask for 1, maybe 2 months per year of the project. And then you want to ask for your research team salary. So maybe you want a postdoc. I can't recommend a postdoc enough. They make your life so much easier. And then your grad students. Maybe you want some PhD students. Maybe you want some MS students. For each project, I usually ask for one student running each of my project components. If you have a PhD program at your university, I'd start with PhD students just because they're around longer than master's students. Like by the time you get master's students really kind of plugging and chugging on their work, it's time for them to graduate. So if you can put a couple years of PhD funding in here, maybe it's a really huge project and you want to ask for 2 students, totally up to you. Something you're going to have to ask your department business manager, the Buffalo, about is your fringe. Your tuition, any fees. Fringe, tuition, and fees are going to be some percentage of the student's salary. But if you're looking at this and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do this, I have no idea how to put fringe benefits in, this is exactly what the Buffalo helps you do. And this is why you give them 1 month of lead time to work with your internal department business manager on your budget. Now, my work is fieldwork intensive, so I'm traveling a lot. I'm going to little communities all over the West. I'm interviewing people. I'm asking them how, warming summers and warming winters are impacting their fishing livelihoods and their fishing recreation. So I'm going to need a good portion of my budget in travel. And keep in mind, usually these projects are about 2 or 3 years. So each column here is corresponding with the year that you're in. So when I work on travel, I usually have a separate page and I break down the travel more specifically. So I have, the people who are traveling, graduate research assistant 1, graduate research assistant 2. These are the 2 students. Principal investigator is me, how much per diem, how many days we're going to be in the field, and then I estimate these out with these more detailed blocks. And again, the internal department business manager can really help you with these sort of things. If you have no idea where to start, just pull up Priceline. How much does a hotel cost? What is the State Department's per diem per day in the city that you want to go to? A lot of this is just Googling and guessing, and that's okay. But then your internal department business manager is really going to help you with that. Internal expendable materials and supplies. If you need computers for your research team in social sciences, we don't normally give grad students computers because you can just use a Chromebook or whatever you have. We don't really put computers in here, but if you want to put computers in there, any type of like printing material, maybe you want to print out 10,000 surveys, all that goes in here. Maybe you need a consultant. Diversity and inclusion was a big part of our last grant. So we put a diversity and inclusion consultant with 20 years of experience here. We put her in, say, for about 50 hours of work. Other direct costs. Some examples of other direct costs are survey costs. So maybe you want to pay Qualtrics for a sample. Maybe it's going to cost about $40,000 to $50,000. Surveys are pretty expensive. Maybe you want to put some open access fees in here. And then some, now I'm not going to get into the weeds here, but this is why you want to involve your internal department business manager really early. Sometimes you'll need to put tuition as a direct cost, and I'll get to why that is in a moment. Well, I'll just get to it right now. Something that is going to drive up the cost of your grant really quickly, and this is like, it blows people's minds when they first start. Your university has anywhere between a 45 to 55% indirect cost rate. So you're going to take 45 to 50%. And again, your internal department business manager knows what this number is. It's sometimes called an F&A cost. It's sometimes called your indirect cost. You take all of the costs of the salary, the tuition, the travel, the computers, the surveys, the open access fees, and then you take 55% of that and then add it on top of the total of your ask. And all of that goes to your university to pay for the team of people who are supporting you, from the admissions office to the guidance counselors to all the people working in the Office of Sponsored Projects. Your F&A, or your indirect cost, is what really keeps your university running. And the reason that your university really likes it whenever you get these federal grants is because not every university pays full F&A or full indirect, so you aren't really raking in a lot of funds for your university with some smaller grants. But if you get a federal grant, they pay that full 45-50%. Whatever your indirect is. Now, these are some previous collaborators. So going back, your collaborators. This most recent grant, I worked with NCAR and Auburn. Your collaborators start doing the same process, working with their internal business manager. They're sending you the same exact grant, and they're asking you for their yearly cost of doing their work. So with Auburn, I was working with a genetics researcher, and with NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, I was working with a hydrologist and a precipitation specialist. So at Wyoming, our indirect costs, our F&A costs are 44.5%. So I'm not working with the full total. Like when you look at this page here, this RFP page, they say, oh, we're going to award up to, say, $600,000. That's not what you're working with. You're working with your direct costs. So everybody's salary, everybody's travel costs, your subaward, this and that. You're working with that plus the percentage that your university takes for F&A, which comes out to about half. And honestly, your university helps you so much. It helps you kind of budget all this stuff. It helps you keep track of all your expenses and so on. So they earn their keep. But just don't see that number in your RFP and think like, oh, I have $600,000 to work with. No, you have about half of that. Okay. And that includes all of your collaborators, your bears, and their subawards. Okay. Now, something that your internal department business manager is going to tell you is we take indirect off of these, we take F&A off these too, but only up to the first $25,000. So your university is taking in indirect percentages off these as well. So all of this is going to really involve a lot of close coordination with your internal department business manager, and that is probably, like I said, going to take a couple weeks of lead time. Once you have this budget completely written up, you write up what's called a budget justification. And if you look at the comments on this video, I'm going to give you this template as well. You want to catalog everything that you're asking for, everybody's salary, your grad student salary, any undergraduate student salary. I put undergrads in every grant. My lab likes to grow junior scientists, so we like to have undergrads involved. You don't have to put undergrads in there. You can just have a project run by your grad students. Totally up to you. Your fringe benefits, if you have no idea what that is, the internal department business manager is going to give you your fringe. Whatever equipment that you want. Here's all of your calculations for your travel. Like I said, most of my work is travel and field work, so I have a lot of travel costs in there. Or other direct costs, consultant services. We paid $25,000 for a survey, and again, tuition is considered a direct cost. And then our subawards. So once you have this budget and your budget justification, you can go, and that's all okayed by your internal department business manager. Then you all use the internal system to deliver these documents to your Office of Sponsored Projects. Now, we haven't even talked about writing up our project proposal yet. The project proposal may seem like that's the toughest part. The toughest part is all the paperwork and internal stuff. So once your budget and justification and maybe like a small blurb about what you want to do is done, that's when you loop in your Office of Sponsored Projects. They're going to be the real people that interface with the federal government's grants.gov platform that you have to submit all these grants on. They are going to be the people that answer any sticky questions that your internal department business manager couldn't answer. They're going to be the people that okay your final budget before it goes in. They have the official paperwork, the official stamps, and they submit these letters from the university that say, hey, we vouch for this person and they are going to deliver everything that they promise. So once you get all that in, that's with sponsored projects. Again, this is why you need a month lead time and then about 2 weeks lead time for the Office of Sponsored Projects. Then you can start putting together your project proposal. And I have my project proposal here. I'm going to have the RFP over here. Now, the first thing that you report are like, have you been funded by any other federal grants before? If so, what have you produced? And they have this very specific format where you say the broader impacts. So real life people that benefited from your research. So I gave 2 workshops 50 decision makers participated. What was the intellectual merit of this? Well, this work actually resulted in quite a few papers and books. They're all cited here. And this is just kind of like proof that you have done previous work of a similar scale. Maybe you had an NSF GRFP when you were an undergraduate. When you were a graduate student. Disclose all of this stuff. And if you don't have much here, you can just say, hey, this is my first big project. You can take a chance on me. So we have all this here. And then this is the real meat of the sandwich. And we're about 20 minutes into a 30-minute video here, and only now am I getting to the project narrative. And again, this is while your budget is working its way through the Office of Sponsored Projects. They're approving everything, they're checking everything. Maybe they're starting to upload some stuff into the grants.gov platform. While this is all going and your paperwork's working its way through, this is where you write up what you're going to actually do on your grant. Now, the way that I like to do this is I like to start with a paragraph that outlines a problem or a puzzle in a way that anybody can understand it. I can read this to a 6th grade kid and they can read this and be like, I can mostly follow that. So there's no greater threat to the nation's natural resources and the human communities that depend on them than climate change. Our planet is also facing an unprecedented global extinction crisis with climate change and invasive species. It's the leading cause of biodiversity loss. Freshwater ecosystems are experiencing some of the most dramatic biodiversity losses on record. Freshwater ecosystems have enhanced vulnerability to climate change and biodiversity loss. Despite these challenges, there are major gaps in what we know about the relationships between the socio-ecological system that we propose to study in our project. We will be looking at climate change, hydrology, ecosystem impacts, and biodiversity loss. So we've said in the first couple lines, what are we doing? And how is this in response to some of the most pressing challenges of our time? And this all relates back to the RFP, what they ask us to do here. Now we're going on, we're saying like, hey, this fills a very serious gap in what we know. We don't know very much about climate-induced biodiversity changes. We propose a specific socio-ecological system to study. Here's what it is. It's climate, hydrology, biodiversity, nature-based tourism livelihoods, and then public preferences for outdoor recreation. So here we highlight the problem, we highlight what we're doing, we use the actual language of the RFP, and it says in the RFP, you have to state very early on what socio-ecological system your project is studying. Now, very quickly, we're on page 1, we're saying, what are we going to do? Well, first, we propose a 3-year project. It's based at the University of Wyoming. And why should you fund the University of Wyoming? Well, we're a primarily undergraduate university. We're R2. We're looking to expand our research capabilities into an R1 university. And we have an interdisciplinary team. Remember the team that we put together? We're telling the funder about the team very early on. We are working with the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Auburn University. What are we going to do? We're going to write a case study of the most iconic ecosystem in North America, the Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains are super important because they draw tourists from all over the world. They spend millions of dollars to hunt and fish on our ecosystems. We have numerous flagship species here. All of the species present in the Rocky Mountain West, here after the Mountain West, we propose the case of trout fisheries. Why do we want to study trout? Well, the inside rationale is because I love fishing and I love fish, but sorry, my dog is snoring. We say this is an immensely culturally important flagship species. It is a symbol of the Mountain West, and it is the species most likely to be impacted most dramatically by climate change in the region. So notice how quickly we said what the problem is, what we're looking to do, and why it's so important. And we did this in language that almost anybody from any field can understand. I believe that is the key to getting funded. I believe it is just speaking very simply about what you want to do, and then go back to your RFP, scroll down to the PPAG, like the thing that tells you exactly how you put this together. That's where you get font sizes, page limits, all this stuff that tells you about what you are and are not allowed to put into this proposal. So I'm just going to go, I have about like 5 minutes left on this video. I really wanted to cap it at 30 minutes, so I'm going to run through this very quickly. And all of these documents are going to be uploaded in the comment of the video, so you can run through this yourself. This proposal was successfully funded, and you can kind of look at what a successfully funded proposal looks like. The case study justification and the significance of trout fisheries. As if we haven't already convinced you, we're going to spend a couple paragraphs telling you, hey, why is our research so important? And this is a literature review telling us about what we know so far about the systems that we're looking at, why they're so important, what specific species we're going to focus on for our proposal, and what the literature already tells about us. Now, very early on, like this is pretty early on. This is after all of the the research question, the focus, and then the justification. We say our project aims to address 4 specific gaps in what we know about socio-ecological systems. So we're telling our specific contribution to this research topic. We list them all out here. First, second, third. So first is we have a poor understanding of the specific relationships between climate change induced shifts, impacts to biodiversity, and the corresponding impacts to human livelihoods. And that's exactly what this RFP asks for. Now, in social science, we use theoretical frameworks. They help us set up our concepts and help us examine our relationships. Here's our theoretical framework. So we're kind of getting into this more technical stuff, and we're putting our research questions in bold so we can just skim them. And then we get into our methodology. And since we have a very interdisciplinary team where we have genetics researchers, we have hydrologists, we parse out what we're going to do, our different objectives. We say who the lead PI of that objective is, where it's based, who we're asking for in the budget to support that project, and what exactly we're going to do. So let's look at one. Lead principal investigator, Kelly Dunning, University of Wyoming. I've asked for a PhD student in my budget, undergraduate researchers, and the project team is going to be supporting my part of the project. So we're using a socio-ecological systems approach. This is exactly what's asked for in the RFP. We're using recreational trout fisheries in the Mountain West as this case study. We're going to create a study of 2 systems, the trout fisheries of Colorado and Wyoming. They have different laws, regulations, and stakeholders. We're going to include modeled systematic changes to climate, hydrology, and biodiversity. These are further revealed in objectives 2 to 4 below. And then we're going to survey individual outdoor recreationalists in the public, the people who make a living on fisheries. So I get into some very specific stuff that I'm going to do here. We're going to use some climate change scenarios, but look at the bottom of my objectives. I say what my specific output is going to be, 2 scientific papers, and how, if you're a program manager at NSF, how are you going to evaluate me and check to make sure that I did what I said I'm going to do? We're going to send the NSF 2 papers and make the data available for public use, and we have a data management plan in our project. Your Office of Sponsored Projects can help you get a template for your data management plan. There's some boilerplate text in there that you can use and borrow so you don't have to recreate the wheel. Now, we're getting into some complex science for Objective 2, climate model, hydrology. This is stuff that I do not work on, and this is stuff that I do not understand. This is where your collaborators are going to fill in the part of your project proposal. So my collaborators from NCAR filled this part in. They made these figures. They're telling what they're going to do for this project, all of these models, all of these outputs. So again, when they conclude their part, they have a minimum of 2 scientific papers, and then how the NSF can evaluate them. Now, we have another objective. We're talking about evolution and ecology. This is led by one of the co-PIs at Auburn University. So she's talking about her methods for modeling different species hybridization. Again, this is stuff that I do not work on. She made all her own figures. She filled this part in. She's talking about a model that she's going to make. She's talking about some model design concepts, details. But again, her section ends with her output, so 2 scientific papers and evaluation methods. Now this continues all of the collaborators. So now we get to a very specific thing that the NSF asked for, broader impacts. Broader impacts are like real world uses of your research. So our research is actually participatory. So the decision makers in fish and wildlife agencies who use our research, they're actually asked from the beginning to be part of our research. So we're talking about how we're going to make sure that our project gets used by real people. We're bringing some K-12 students from underrepresented backgrounds. We're involving the Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Science Manners Club from Auburn University. They're going to bring some students over to Yellowstone. Now we talk about how our project is going to be managed. This is saying who's responsible for ensuring which deliverables are met and when. And honestly, this is the bulk of what you're turning in. Your objectives, your lit review, the roles of each person on the team. And you see now why I said, hey, try to start this a month in advance because, this is a lot of work and a lot of moving pieces. Now, once you get this all done, where does it go? It goes into the online submissions portal called grants.gov. The people in your university help you with this. Maybe the Office of Sponsored Projects helps with this. At my particular university, it's the Office of Sponsored Projects, OSP, that helps you upload into research.gov. You're going to have to upload your budget justification, some letters from the Office of Sponsored Projects saying that they certify and say that you're going to deliver what you say. And that's it. So from start to bottom, from the moment that you find your RFP up until submission with your Office of Sponsored Projects, all within a 30-minute time frame. I hope that you've learned today how you can work to submit a grant at your university. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. My email is right here, kelly.dunning@uwyo.edu, and I would be very happy to help you out. Okay, thank you. So long.